Welcome back to Starting Six, a volleyball podcast with Haley and Liv. We have a very, very exciting week to recap. Obviously, the elephant in the room is that Wisconsin and Nebraska finally played each other in the first of two games in the regular season. And we've decided to make that our official game of the week. So we will be recapping that and giving our thoughts at the end of this episode. So when we get to Saturday, we will be skipping that game and going all the way through Sunday before we recap the biggest game of the year so far.
I was telling people, I was like, this is the national championship in October, and we'll get another one in December. Well, actually, we'll get one in October, November when they play each other again, and then December when they probably will play each other for a third time.
Yeah, it was, there was a lot of hype building up to it, a lot of anticipation. This is that game, something that Nebraska fans wait all year for, and it was just a great game. So I'm excited to get there. But we got some other teams we want to talk about. We got some big upsets to discuss. We have some games that went to 5 that probably shouldn't have. So if you're ready, we're just going to dive right into it. All right. So first things first, we are going all the way back to the 18th of October, and TCU, the Horned Frogs. That's all I ever think of when we talk about TCU and their ugly court.
Oh, it's horrible.
Oh my God, the court is so bad.
I would probably have like epilepsy if I played on that court.
So horrible. And they hosted number 6 Texas, and Texas's orange on the TCU court was terrible.
Yeah.
It was an eyesore. It was like the worst thing ever.
I stopped watching because it hurt my eyeballs.
Yeah. It was terrible. However, this was a really great match of volleyball. So Texas did end up coming out with the win in 5. Those scores were 14-25, 25-22, 21-25, 25-23, 15-13. So very close matchup here. I watched this game and I was quite confused because I, of course, because this is what happens, is last week said Texas looks like Texas. They're kicking ass. And then, this happens and they came out with a win, but it probably shouldn't have been in 5. I think Texas had a little bit of a hard time getting their offense going, which, seems to be a little bit of a trend. And I think it makes sense, but I also have to give a lot of credit. TCU played out of their mind.
Yeah.
They looked really good. So, yeah, it was just kind of like one of those, again, like we're doing this again, So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. I know you watched it too because we were texting.
Yeah, like you said, Texas just struggled in the beginning. They couldn't really find anything. And TCU, they were really fast, like faster, I think, than Texas had anticipated because their blocking wasn't great in the first set or two. But also some just fun fact, one of TCU's outside, it was a transfer from Texas. So she was playing her previous team. It was Melanie Para. I think she's from overseas as well. But she had a standout game. She played really well. And I think that kind of contributed to TCU having such a fight, was having, one player being on Texas. And so it's kind of like a internal rivalry for her. And so she was really fired up and really pumped up. And so I think that helped TCU take it to 5.
Yeah, she had 20 kills. She was hitting a .07 or 207, excuse me. So big numbers coming out of her. I think that totally makes sense. Leading for Texas, of course, is Maddie Skinner. And that kind of led me to my note. If Texas didn't have Maddie Skinner, TCU would have won that game.
Yeah. And it wouldn't have been in 5. No. It probably would have been in 3 or 4.
Yeah, I really think, Texas, when you're watching them, they talk a lot about Asia O'Neal as well. And I definitely think it's a true testament, maybe a little bit of a hot take, but there's only so much a middle can do, right? it's normal for people who know the game of volleyball to know that your outsides and, or your pins, your outsides and your right sides are typically who gets the job done more than others. Keeping in mind too, Asia O'Neal plays 3 rotations, and she's really only getting set when the ball's in the system. So in my opinion, Texas relies so heavy on Maddie Skinner that when you go into games like this where you see TCU spreading the wealth a little bit more and other teams that Texas has played, scouting that when you know that Maddie Skinner is probably just going to be their go-to isn't quite difficult. So I definitely think that if she had a bad game or Texas didn't have her, TCU would have 100% won that game.
For sure. And something else about that is because they're relying so heavily on Madison Skinner, their other outside has not been playing well. Jenna Wennis has not been putting up good numbers. She had 10 kills that match. But then Madison Skinner leaves the front row, goes to the back row, is still a threat in the back row, but then you can't rely on your outside anymore. So then you have to rely on your right side and your middle. Middles can only do so much on a in-system ball. Same thing with the right side. So now you're relying on an iffy outside hitter for all your junk balls. And then you're having errors, and then you're stuck in a rotation. So it's one thing like Nebraska to have 2 big outside hitters that are playing well when they're in the front row. But then when you only have 1 outside hitter that's playing well, you get stuck in a rut when that outside hitter is in the back row. And then you have to rely on others and the serve receive, and it just kind of gets messy. And I feel like that's what Texas falls into a lot.
Yeah. And the last note I want to make about this game, this is Texas's first. Why does that sound? It's Texas.
Yeah, it's because they end in an S, so it's.
Okay. I'll rephrase this. This is the first 5-set match of the 2023 season for Texas. So TCU is the first team to take Texas to 5 this year.
Interesting.
Yeah, good for you, TCU. All right. Next up, we're talking about our favorite team here. Number 19, Purdue hosted Indiana in a Big Ten face-off and won in 4. Those scores were 25-22, 25-22, 21-25, 25-13. Big performance from Eva Hudson, not so much from Chloe Chicoine. Pretty big numbers coming out of Indiana as well. Their top hitter had 15 kills, followed by 2 hitters with 11. So I watched sets 2 and 3 of this game because it overlapped with Texas, which I was watching, and then overlapped with Wisconsin. So I was kind of doing the whole flip through. So I watched sets 2 and 3 closer than the other sets of this. But one thing I want to kind of talk about, and I want to know your answer to this question, because I actually didn't know the answer. So Indiana served and it hit the line judge's foot.
Okay.
So for anyone who doesn't know volleyball, in a collegiate match, there's an up ref, a down ref, and 2 line judges or line refs or whatever you want to call them. And they stand in the corner and they help flag if the ball was in, out, touch, blah, blah, blah. So Indiana serves and hits the line judge's foot on the other side of the court. Now, typically when those line judges stand, they have like 1 foot facing one sideline and 1 foot facing the other.
Yeah, they kind of do like a V,
a V,
a right
and
angle.
Sometimes they'll kind of like crouch down a little to get a good look. It hit the line judge. What would you think the call would be?
Out.
Okay, I thought the same thing. Indiana got an ace. They called it an ace.
The line judge isn't supposed to be inside the court. Their feet are supposed to be outside the court. So unless, like, I guess possibly if their foot is right next to the line, so half of the ball would have touched the line, then maybe so. But I feel like that's a really subjective call because they are in the way. If anything, they should replay that. Right. So Purdue challenged it because obviously everyone on Purdue is celebrating, because typically if you hit the line judge, it's because you hit it out. So Purdue is kind of celebrating and looking up and going, what is going on? So they challenged it and they showed the replay, and that is exactly what happened. Like, it hit
the line judge's foot, and they gave it an ace. And I was like,
Wow.
what? I actually, like, at first I was like, I don't know the answer to this question. Like,
Yeah.
one of the announcers was saying that he was like, that, like, what actually happens? And they were both like, I actually, I don't really know what the protocol is. And so I wanted to know what your thoughts were, because mine was also that it was out, but Indiana got the ace for it.
Interesting. I feel like that's a super subjective call because it hit something to interfere with it hitting the ground first,
Yeah, I think it should have been a replay as well, but they didn't. So I want to get your opinion on that. But just one other note that I did want to make. So Indiana, I was a little curious, like, why this game went the way that it did, and I looked it up. Indiana averages a hitting percentage of .238 as a team, and against Purdue they hit a .132. So I'm just a little disappointed, because I really thought this would be a match that Indiana could take. I would imagine playing in Purdue is difficult. Their student section has been pretty wild all year, but just a little disappointed in that. I mean, bad offensive days happen, but yeah, I was really concerned about the line judge thing. I wanted to know what your opinion was. Okay, moving on here. So we don't need to go too in depth about these, because the scores are what they should be, but I have a couple notes that we want to make. So also on the 18th, number 1, Wisconsin hosted Ohio State in a Big Ten face-off and swept 25-22, 25-15, 25-18. At this point in time, that was 30 straight sets won for Wisconsin, and they were missing Devin Robinson and MJ Hamill still to minor injuries. The next thing I want to talk about is Northwestern hosted number 2 Nebraska. Nebraska swept 25-15, 25-16, 25-21, but Lindsay Krause is out.
Yeah, she has an ankle injury.
Yes, and she was shown not dressed and on crutches at the Wisconsin game. So hopefully a quick recovery for her. That's really unfortunate after she was out weeks ago with a shoulder injury, I think it was.
Yeah. I think they said that Tuesday before this match, she hurt it in practice.
Yeah.
Is what I had heard. So,
yeah. And then also
recovery.
Yeah. And then also during that match, Northwestern's top hitter, Julia Sangiacomo, was also out with a knee injury. I didn't see it, so I don't know if it was minor, major. I'm not sure about that. But I definitely think that had a play. Like, I'm not saying that Nebraska shouldn't have been curb stomping them, but I definitely think that her being out, because every time we've talked about Northwestern, Julia's name gets brought up.
Yes.
So I definitely think that was kind of a big hit for them, and hopefully she's okay as well. So a little shaky in the injury game here.
Yeah, which now is kind of that time when injuries, minor injuries, maybe some aggravated body parts is going to happen. And so I feel like you're going to start seeing maybe more substitutes, or in lesser games, bench players are going to start playing because they need to conserve all of their top players.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that mid-season kind of drought a little bit where things start to feel a little heavier and a little harder. So hopefully nothing too serious. Obviously, Lindsay's on crutches, so that doesn't look as good. But hoping for a quick recovery for her as well. Last few on the 18th, number 7 Pittsburgh swept Virginia, and in a in-state battle, I guess, sort of, because Michigan's a weird state, but Michigan State hosted Michigan and won in 4. And I watched a little bit of that game because it was also on before Wisconsin. So predictable to me. The first 2 sets were pretty close, but then Michigan State ran away with it pretty quickly there.
Yeah.
The only game on the 19th, I just want to mention, number 9 BYU swept Iowa State very, very easily. And now moving on to the 20th, the first game I have here that I'd like to talk about is an upset that upsets me.
A reverse sweep.
A reverse, yep, that's my first note. Reverse sweep.
Same.
USC beat number 4 Washington State in 5.
Mm-hmm.
The scores were 17-25, 14-25, 25-22, 25-23, 15-8.
Mm-hmm.
Just sad. It makes me sad.
It's a pretty big comeback, like 17 or 25-17, 25-14 to come back and win it. Like that's it's pretty impressive.
And at home. Like what a big win at home. Like I love that. USC hit out of their minds.
Mm-hmm.
So in set 1 they hit a .278 and these are the 2 sets they lost. In set 2 they hit a .389 and in set 3 they hit a .533. Wow. So they were really offensively here to play. Their top hitter was Skylar Fields with 21 kills. Mm-hmm. She was and 15 digs. Like she was really carrying them. Yeah. But you know, it makes me sad. I've been a little bit of a champion for Washington State this year. I like what they have going on. I'm sure that they'll bounce back from this pretty quick. But it is also like kind of what we've talked about in the past. I think we talked about it with Louisville, is when these teams in, I don't know if lesser conferences is the correct way to put that, but when you're playing in a conference where maybe you and one other team, maybe 2 other teams are ranked, you have a much higher possibility of losing to an unranked team and that messing with your national ranking. And I think that's what happened here. I mean, it was a 5, so it's not like it was just a beat down, but hopefully Washington State can bounce back because I don't want to see them tumble.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Skylar Fields, she kind of carries that whole team. We saw this a few weeks ago when USC beat Purdue. Skylar Fields played out of her mind. So I think if they can get more of their hitters like her, then I think USC could be ranked very soon. But kind of right now, they only have her, I feel like. I mean, their other hitters were still hitting double digits, but she just is playing out of her mind.
Now, USC has like dabbled a little bit at the bottom this year, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Believe so, yeah. Earlier on in the season, they have. So, honestly, I'm kind of rooting for them. It would be kind of cool to see them up there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a big win. 15-8 in a 5th set is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, an almost upset. It wasn't, but it was almost. Number 5, Louisville was on the road at Wake Forest and took the W in 5. This is one of those games where the scores make no sense.
Yeah,
like I genuinely don't get it.
Yeah, and this was also a reverse sweep as well. And so with that noted, the scores really don't make any sense.
No, so yeah, that was my first note. I love a reverse sweep. So Louisville went down the first 2 sets, 21-25, 23-25, came back and won 25-15, 25-5, 15-7. So I don't really know how you beat a number 5 team 21-25, 23-25, and then lose 25-5.
I don't either. Like Louisville, you just decided to show up in the 4th set? Like,
yeah. And Wake Forest just decided to be done.
Yeah, I don't know. No idea.
Yeah, that's a bench for Wake Forest. You really dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah.
Leading, obviously, Anna DeBeer with 17 kills. Louisville hit over 300 in set 2 and 3 and over a 500 in set 4 and 5. And in my notes we kind of talked about it. This might be kind of like the first example of that mid-season hump a little bit, where you're starting to get a little wear and tear. You're tired. You're balancing a little bit more mentally and physically. You're on the road. So I'm going to chalk it up to that.
Okay.
Next, I have a top 15 matchup. Number 12, Tennessee hosted number 10, Arkansas, and Arkansas took the win in 4. Those scores were 25-27, 25-16, 25-22, 25-20. For Arkansas, Taylor, it has to be Heed, right? There's no way her last name's Head.
I honestly have no idea. And it doesn't give you like on the roster, like the little click to hear them pronounce it, which is a bummer.
I read Heed, so I'm going to go with that. But if your last name is Head, I'm sorry. She had 24 kills, 3 errors on 58 attempts. She had a .362, 21 digs.
She had a standout weekend. Both matches she hit, this one and then the one on Sunday, the 22nd, 24 kills, hitting in the 300 both games. Like, what? And that's a top 15 matchup. Like, that's super impressive.
Yeah, I definitely think Tennessee's struggling a little bit since being upset by Kentucky last week. And Arkansas is putting up big numbers when it matters. So I guess the rankings stand. And that's the way it should be. But yeah, what a performance. I mean, the next hitter on Arkansas had 11 kills.
Yeah.
And I also put the note in there too. Their setter, Hannah Hogue, she had 49 assists and 28 digs. So half of her assists were Taylor's kills.
Oh, that's crazy insane to think about. I love when we mention that, because that's just,
it puts it into perspective.
I was just going to say that. It really puts it in perspective, because you're like, oh, 24 kills. But then when you're like, well, no, half of the setter's assists were one person. And then you have to divide the other half amongst 4 or 5 other hitters.
Right. Yeah. I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. The next one on the 20th that I want to go a little more in depth on is Mizzou. Unranked Mizzou sweeps number 23 Auburn, and they swept. These scores were 25-23, 25-21, 25-18. Their setter had a .333 hitting percentage and 31 assists, which in a 3-set match I feel like is pretty good.
Yeah.
And that my only note is like, I love when an upset like this happens for like a lower ranked team. Like, I just love it. Like, you get a little taste of it and now it's gone.
Yeah. You got to put a little bit more effort to stay up there. You can't just get there and stay.
Yeah, and Auburn has been one of those teams too that's been like, some weeks deserve to be there, some weeks probably not.
Yeah.
So just wanted to mention that little upset there. And then quick, I'll just run through some other games that happened on the 20th. Number 7, Pittsburgh sweeps NC State. Number 8, Oregon sweeps California. Number 9, BYU sweeps Iowa State again. Number 11, Penn State sweeps Iowa. Number 13, Georgia Tech takes a win over Duke in 4. Number 15, Creighton sweeps UConn. Number 17, Florida pulls out a win in 4 over Texas A&M. And Minnesota sweeps Rutgers. 25-9 was the last set against Rutgers.
Same thing, like, Minnesota, what are you doing? I don't understand you.
Yeah, and then the last one too, my notes were out of order, but number 3, Stanford swept Oregon State.
Yes.
Oregon State had a big week last week, so.
They did.
All right, moving on to the 21st. Again, going to note, we will talk about Nebraska and Wisconsin at the end, so don't think we're skipping that, because we're not.
Just totally skips the most important game of the season so far.
Yeah, just like, whatever, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, first up, Big Ten play. Indiana gets a big win over Ohio State in 5. Those scores were 21-25, 25-23, 25-22, 20-25, 15-13. Emily Londot had 25 kills on 71 attempts. And 17 digs. Can't leave that out.
My shoulder would have actually fallen off my body.
No, here's what my note says. I'm sorry, 71? That's what my note says.
How is she still going? Like that, like, I want to know, I should look this up, how many attempts she has in the season so far.
It has to be so many. Look it up. Is she a 5th year or a senior?
She's a 5th year, I'm pretty sure.
Oh my God, I'd be dying.
That's what I'm saying. Regardless if you're a 5th year or a senior, well, just a senior, hold on. Like, that's insane. Okay, well, 2020, she was a freshman.
Yeah, so she'd be she'd be a senior, true senior.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, sorry. Focus. I want to see her stats. Okay. 881 total attempts this season, and we are only halfway.
Oh, that's so many.
Like, she's had 2 games with 65 attempts, 52, 40, 63, 64, 55. Like, she hasn't had, her lowest number of attempts was 21 in a sweep against, I don't even know what team that is, ETSU.
Oh my God, that like made my stomach turn.
She probably averages like 40 to 50 attempts a match.
Oh my
God bless your soul, girl. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, so I'm looking to compare here.
Do you want to know her total attempts for all of her career?
Yeah.
3,780. And so that's just in matches. Okay. She is taking 50 plus probably reps a game or a practice.
In practice.
And so you're tripling that almost in a year.
Yeah. And also to put it into perspective too, because another team we talk about that relies heavy on their outsides, I just looked it up. Madison Skinner has 699 total attempts.
Let me look at Raina Terry from Illinois. I think last week I mentioned it.
Although this also is worth noting, since I'm looking at these, Madison Skinner has 699 on the year right now, halfway through. Last year she took 760. So she's going to double what she had last year.
Okay. So the other person, and I think I mentioned it last week. Okay. So the person who I believe has the most attempts so far, like as an individual, is Illinois' senior outside hitter, Raina Terry. She has 1,023 attempts so far.
So many.
And so that's 150 more than Emily Londot, but they have almost the same amount of kills. So Raina Terry has 363, while Emily Londot has 338.
Wow.
So it's not even like Raina Terry is getting more kills with the more attempts she has.
Yeah.
She's just getting the ball however much more and still making errors or not getting kills. Like, that's just insane to think about.
Yeah, that's insanity. Oh, that makes me that makes me itchy. It's terrible. I know. Okay. Well, Ohio State. down they go.
Yep.
All right. Some other ones just to run through quick on the 21st. Number 14, Kansas wins over TCU in 4. Number 22, Houston sweeps Texas Tech. Maryland gets the win over Iowa in 4. Number 21, Baylor wins over number 24, UCF in 4. And Northwestern beats Michigan in 5. On to the 22nd. I got 2 big ones I want to talk about here. Yeah. 2 upsets. First one, number 20, Kentucky hosted number 10, Arkansas, who we were just blowing smoke up their ass. And Kentucky won in 5.
Yes.
The scores were 16-25, 25-16, 25-22, 19-25, 15-10. Again, Taylor Heat had 24 kills and Jillian Gillen had 23. So big numbers coming out of Arkansas, but Kentucky spread the wealth. They had a hitter with 17 kills and 2 with 14. And that was what my note said. I think Kentucky just spreads the wealth. I mean, I looked at the stats, and Kentucky had 6 hitters and their setter, so 7 offensive players, I guess you could say, with kills. And Arkansas had 5, and only one of those girls, I think she had like 5 or 6 attempts, and that was it. So that kind of just shows that Kentucky was spreading the wealth around a little bit. Like their middles were getting some, their outside was getting some, their right side getting some, maybe some out of the back row. And Arkansas wasn't doing that. And like we've reiterated time and time again, I really think that adds up. Kentucky also hit over 200 in sets 1, 3, and 4, over a 400 in set 2, and just under a 400 in set 5. So Kentucky was just whacking it.
Yeah, and I think Kentucky does a good job of utilizing their middles when they need to, because they have some big middles. Elise Getzinger, she's a middle. She had 14 kills hitting over 400. And so I think that's a really important part that I think a lot of teams lack, is utilizing their middles, even when it's not a perfect set, because most teams are expecting a perfect pass to go to the middle. But you also need to set your middle when you're out of system to really throw them off. And I think Kentucky does a really good job at utilizing their middles at any given point. And I think that, like you said, spreading wealth, they do it really well, especially using their middles. And because they're so strong, it throws Arkansas or any other team off, and they can't get a good block up.
Yeah, Kentucky's one of those teams too. They have a very well-renowned program, so I'm sure that at their home games, their student section and their fans are hard to play against, which I'm a firm believer in home court advantage. I think we've seen a lot of it this year. I'm sure that played into this quite a bit. But the only other thing too I'll say about Kentucky is they're a team that's going to be around. Like they're going to be sitting in that top 25, whether it's 20 or whether it's 10. I mean, they're going to be sitting in there and fighting their way, because that's what their program does and has done for many years. So not overly surprised, a little bit just based off of Arkansas's performance against Tennessee. To turn around and lose to Kentucky 2 days later is a little tough.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were putting up big numbers, spreading the wealth. It's hard to play against.
Yeah, for sure.
The second upset is this one hurts a little. Number 11 Penn State drops to number 19 Purdue in 4. Those scores were 18-25, 25-23, 25-23, 25-22. So it sounds like it was a great match. I worked Saturday, so I did not get to watch volleyball. Chloe Chicoine had 20 kills and Eva Hudson had 19. For Penn State, Jess Mirzik, 27 kills. Girl, it was crazy. She had a .262 hitting percentage on 27 kills.
I know.
Oh my God. My notes say, no, Penn State, what happened? And then my second one, like we were talking about, is spread the wealth, people. Yeah. Where are Penn State's middles?
I know, which they've been doing good using them. And I don't know if Purdue just shut them down or if they were just non-existent. I don't know, because I don't have any of them listed as people with kills.
I don't know why. I don't get it.
I don't either. I think that seriously hurt them.
It had to have. Yeah, I don't know if they were underperforming or they just weren't receiving the ball. But I will say Mac Pedraza, she had 41 assists and 27 of them were to Jess Mirzik.
Yep.
27. So let me do the math.
And 13 went to Cameron Hanna. So only one other assist went to a different player, if I'm doing that math right. Am I doing that right? 30, 40? She had 41 assists.
Yeah, you're right.
27 plus 13 is 40.
Yeah.
So only one other player. Okay, well, I guess it makes sense for Mac, but like also the libero can have an assist. I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Okay. No, and so 66% of Mac's assists, I guess you could say, were because of Jess Mirzik.
Yeah.
Which is insanity, really.
is.
Anyway, crazy stuff. Yeah. Okay, so really quick, I'm just gonna run through some other scores before we get to what everybody's waiting for. Number 3 Stanford got a big win over number 8 Oregon in 4. Number 4 Washington State beat UCLA in 4. Number 21 Baylor again sweeps number 24 UCF, and Minnesota gets the win over Michigan State in 4. That wrapped it up.
Yeah.
Let's get down to it. So Liv and I are starting a new segment starting this week because, like we said in our week 7 recap, this is when we're really getting down to the big games, the big matches. So we are now going to start doing a game of the week. And what better time to start than with the number 1 versus the number 2 match? Wisconsin went on the road to play number 2 Nebraska and lost in 5. Now, I got a couple things I want to say right off the bat.
Okay.
I had to work. So thank you to my best friends Liv and Taylor for texting me updates on my Apple Watch so that I could know what was going on, because my mother, God love her, was just sending me gifts. I was like, I don't know what any of this means. Like, what's going on? Like, she sent me one of like Ross Geller and then one of someone biting their nails. I was like, Mom, what's happening? Like, no one, like, she wasn't telling me what was going on. So thank you for sending me actual updates. But yeah, I did make it home in time. I listened to set 3 in the car on the way home, and then I was able to watch sets 4 and 5. So let's talk about it. What do you want to do first? You want to talk about some stats, or do you want to talk about our opinion?
I don't even know. Like I'm upset. I can't be upset about the outcome of this, but I am at the same time. Being a Wisconsin fan, but then being a volleyball fan, like, this was the most anticipated match of the year. And I think it's just when they play each other, it always is. And they went to 5. This is what we wanted. And it was a great showing. But I'm still just like a little bitter.
Yeah.
Being a Wisconsin fan, but it was a great showing. I think we should go through stats and then we'll rant about our opinions after.
Okay. So for Nebraska, Merritt Beeson might be the best offensive player in college volleyball right now. She had 21 kills, 13 errors on 52 attempts for a .154. And I want to say 52 attempts for a right side is unreal.
A ton.
Granted, I know she takes back row attacks as well because she plays 6 rotations, but that's a lot.
Yeah.
Harper Murray had 14 kills. I believe Allie Batenhorst also had 14, but then I also put in here Bergen Riley had a 2.86 hitting percentage, 50 assists, 1 ace, and 17 digs. On the flip side, Sarah Franklin had 17 kills, 4 errors on 49 attempts for a .265%. Devin Robinson and Temi Thomas Aguilera each had 10 kills, and Julia Orzel had 18 digs. Some other stats outside of player stats that I just think we should talk about quick before we start rambling. This is only the 5th time in NCAA history since the year 2000 a number 1 versus number 2 ranked match has gone to 5 sets. They also said that this match almost perfectly mimicked what happened in the 2021 national championship game that involved these two. However, the outcome obviously was different. This is the first time that both Nebraska and Wisconsin have started their seasons 18-0 at the same time. And there was a new Devaney Center record for Nebraska with 9,128 fans in attendance. And we were texting about this, and it has to be noted. They've shown that in the Devaney Center, there is standing room only, which is you're literally in the ceiling.
Yeah,
like
you're in the rafters.
You're in the rafters. And those tickets were going for $208. That's the cheapest ticket you could get to this game, and you're in the ceiling. $208.
Yeah. I think honestly, one of the best parts of this game and how they broadcasted it was they put a little graphic up with the Nebraska football, how much their tickets were going for, $24. What Nebraska's previous games were going for, which was like $100. What this one was going for, which was like average of like $250, and then what their next games looking forward are going for, which are like averaging like $200 as well. And so it's just kind of, it shows Nebraska is a volleyball school when their football team tickets are going for a fraction
so
of the price.
This is what they look like. Oh no. I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell. But that's from the standing room only.
Yep.
Like, that's what it looks like.
Ants.
Like, you're literally in the rafters. Like, you can see the plumbing, and you can't even see the lights. Like, you're above the lights in the gym.
No. I don't even know how they could tell who was who, to be honest.
Me either. It's insanity. I actually can't believe it at all.
Yeah. This was also Nebraska's 314th consecutive home sold out match.
Yeah. It's just insane.
That's fucking insane.
It is. It's crazy. I'm mind blown. Honestly, this has been such a year for Nebraska volleyball, and I know we come on here and we, and I'm sure it'll be very apparent when we're talking about this that we are Badger fans, but it's so hard not to be so happy for Nebraska at the same time. Like, if it had been any other opponent, I would have been like, Nebraska's the world champions. Like, they deserve the natty. Like, I truly believe that you and I both enjoy Nebraska so much. Yeah. And this year has just been a standout year for their program. Yeah. And I really think, obviously this sounds a little redundant because it's a number 1 versus a number 2 team, but I really think this was going to go either way. And you and I had both kind of agreed that if it, was going to come down to it, Nebraska was probably going to pull it out. Yeah. Being at home, which I think definitely mattered.
Yes. Yeah. I also think you talked about both teams having some injuries, and I think that contributed a lot to both teams. But I think maybe it may have hurt Wisconsin, honestly, for those 2 players to come back, and this being their first match back, even though they were gone for just 2 matches. I think you could tell that they weren't really in their groove, where I think Nebraska didn't have to adjust maybe as much with Lindsay Krause being out and Allie Bainthorst coming in. But that's just kind of a hot take. I think if those 2 players, MJ Hamill and Devin Robinson, didn't get injured, I think there could have been a different outcome.
I agree. I also think that one thing that wasn't capitalized on enough for Wisconsin was the fact that Harper Murray wasn't playing well.
Agreed.
She was hitting negative, I think, for set 3 and 4.
She was hitting negative almost the entire match until set 5.
Yeah. So for me, I think that Harper Murray was going to have a bigger challenge than Merritt Beeson because of Anna Smrek and then the return of Devin Robinson. Yeah. Anna Smrek's 6'9", so that's that. And Devin Robinson and Carter Booth are one of the best blocking duos in college volleyball. So I think it was just kind of a given that Harper wasn't going to be the reason Nebraska succeeded. Yeah. And Merritt had opportunity to perform well. She struggled with the block. Don't get me wrong. Like, it wasn't a breeze for her. But once she figured out what was working and what she could do, she was unstoppable. So I definitely think that had something to do with it. And I think that will translate to when they play in the field house. However, it's not a given that Harper Murray is going to be hitting in the negative.
Yeah. And I think with that, I think it showed her youth a lot, having such a huge block and not knowing how to get around it and to adjust, and then kind of, getting in her head a little bit, just, she's not playing like how she normally does. And that's totally fine. It's a huge match right now and you have huge blockers and you need to adjust, but then you can't let it affect the rest of your playing. And I think that's where that youth comes in, is when you can't get your swing on, and then it affects your defense, and then it affects your serve receive, and then it affects your serving. She got pulled out at one point during the match. So I think you just see her youth in it, and I don't think she's necessarily had to fight like she did in that one and have such a challenge. And so it'll be super interesting to see how she overcomes that when they play again in Wisconsin.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on what you saw from Wisconsin?
I thought their block was really well. I thought set 2, it really came alive. I don't think that they utilized their middles enough. I think Carter Booth should have been given more sets. Same with Cece Crawford. She didn't really have any sets. I feel like they were more just utilized for their defense and their block, which is fine. But I think Carter Booth is just huge and amazing in the middle, that they needed to capitalize on it a little bit more. But I thought Julia, and we texted about this, like, finally your defense and your back row skills have come alive. And I understand why she's the libero now. After that match, I have a lot more faith in her, and I can see the vision that Kelly Sheffield has had this whole season. And I thought she played outstanding, which I was really happy to see.
Yeah, I would agree. I think she showed why she wears that jersey. I think she showed what she can do in these big moments where there's a lot riding on it. The other thing too is there's when Gigi's in the back row for Temi, Julia's playing in 6, and then when Sarah's in the back row, she's playing in 5. Yeah. So when she's playing in 6, she's this far away from Nebraska fans. Yeah. And so to have that amount of pressure, kind of, on top of playing defense in 2 different spots throughout the entire game, I was super impressed with what I saw from her. Yeah. On top of, I thought she looked a little bit like a leader, which I don't think we've seen too much from her. Yeah. And then I also thought that Temi is starting to find her footing quite a bit more. And even though she only had 10 kills, there were a lot of really positive block touches. She was making Nebraska work at the very least, which I think is important. And, the other thing too, and my mom makes this argument the best, is Anna Smrek tends to freeze up in these big games. So when there's games that there's not a lot riding on it, she's a top hitter typically. When they play these bigger matches, she tends to almost like recede.
Yeah, she plays really conservatively because I think she's afraid to make the errors. Yeah. At least that's what it looks like.
Yeah, I would agree. And my mom makes this argument all the time. And she has been for the past 3 years with Anna on the team. But this was a game that we probably could have used our 6'9" right side a little bit.
I agree. And I was going to add with Wisconsin, like, I felt at least in the first set and kind of throughout, when they would throw in their tips and rolls, they were not smart. They were not hidden. And I think Anna threw in a lot of tips and rolls, and they were all going to Lexi. Like, you cannot hit, you cannot tip or put any ball in the vicinity of Lexi Rodriguez. Like, you can't. She's going to pick it all up. And I thought when we were tipping and playing, doing roll shots and things like that, we were only giving them to her, and then they were in system and they would get a kill. So I think if we were if Wisconsin, moving forward, if they're going to do that, they need to have better placement of where they're going to do that and be more court aware. I think at times they kind of forget how good Lexi is, and they were swinging to her, and it was an easy up for her.
Yeah, Lexi tends to, I think this year, her talent and what she brings to Nebraska has been a bit overshadowed by Mara Beeson, Harper Murray, Bergen Riley, Andy Jackson, like these, these big changes. because she's remained steady for Nebraska. And I think that sometimes what she contributes can be a little overlooked, which I think is pretty typical for a lot of liberos.
Yes.
But it's very important to remember that when you're in my opinion, when you're in the scouting room and you're looking at Nebraska, you don't serve to, you don't tip to, and you don't hit at Lexi Rodriguez.
Exactly.
She should have no digs. Don't ditch her.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, anything else in game? Otherwise, I want to talk about post game.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the post game. Because, like I said, Liv and I do root for Nebraska. They've had an insane year with the 92,000 fans in Memorial Stadium. They have an undefeated record. They have an insane offense, and they are now the #1 team in the nation. The celebrations after they won were hard to be mad at. First thing I want to talk about is John Cook.
Yeah.
I have never seen that man look like this ever. I've watched a lot of Nebraska volleyball.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen that man's teeth. Like, he is a pretty stoic.
Yeah.
He sits. He looks concerned.
Yes.
He doesn't agree. That's really the extent you get from him. So the girls ran off the court after they did the high fives. Nebraska did a little bit of a huddle, and then they ended up running off the court. John Cook stayed. He stayed on that court. The students, you could tell they didn't know if they should run down, but they were kind of timid, and then they started to like slowly kind of like crowd around him and on the court. And all the students, a lot of them were wearing red cowboy hats with a big N on them, gave one to John Cook. He had the biggest smile on his face. He was like asking them for the hat. They were calling him Cowboy Cook. It was just like, it was hard to be upset about it. Like it was just so fun. He looked like he was having a blast.
Yeah.
And then they put Merritt Beeson on the headset so that she could speak and they could ask her a few questions, and it is hard not to like her.
Yeah, I know.
Listening to her talk and her mindset shows why she's a captain in her first year at Nebraska, and her being a true junior, I just think she has a lot to show in the rest of this year and in coming years. She has been the best addition to any team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy. Just really blows my mind. I mean, she's just insane. And I'm listening to her talk and I'm like, oh my God. Like, no wonder everyone talks so highly of you. Lexi Rodriguez did an interview afterwards talking so highly about her as well, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
The other thing about the post game that I wanted to mention, just Huskers Athletics posted something from what's called the rail yard. It looks
I saw that.
Yeah, it looks like a corridor in a very nice, I'm going to say strip mall kind of style. It looks like a bunch of bars and restaurants. It reminds me of the Deer District in Milwaukee, and they had a big screen, and there's just a huge crowd of fans watching the game on TV, like we did when the Bucks were in the NBA Finals. I have chills talking about it. It's truly incredible. If you go to Husker VB on Instagram, you can see the video. There's no place like Nebraska. Like, this is incredible. I can't. There's a lot of Badger fans, and there's a lot of fans that don't get to go see the Badgers in the field house, but I can't imagine this happening in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Like, is that crazy to say?
No, I think it's just the culture. I mean, Nebraska has worked so hard, not to say that other teams and other programs haven't, but it is literally their blood, sweat, and tears putting into this program and the state, the university, to make it a volleyball school. And I just don't think other teams can replicate it. Like, I think it's something special that only a select few have. And I don't think other teams, no matter how much they try, I don't think it'll ever beat Nebraska volleyball. Like, it's such a long history of this culture, and it hasn't swayed, and it's just been growing, and they've done so much for volleyball in general for the fans that everyone gravitates towards them instead of gravitating towards others, even though we still gravitate towards others because they're doing similar things and growing their sport and their culture in their programs. But I think because Nebraska's like the pioneers of it and have been for so long, like they have strong roots that others can't beat and others just can't replicate. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but like if you understand volleyball, like you kind of understand like Nebraska volleyball, like you don't touch it because it's just so special and iconic, and you just give them praise.
Yeah, it's really magic. It's something that I think that a lot of women's athletic programs in general will learn from and take away from. And I think that Nebraska fans and the Nebraska volleyball program should be so proud of what they've built, and to put in the effort that they did this year with the football stadium and with selling out home games and now beating number 1 Wisconsin, becoming the number 1 team in the nation for the first time this year. The fans show that it's almost like them showing up in these ways is saying like, we see you, we're here for you, like we understand what you're doing. And that's not something that women's sports gets a lot of. So I definitely think that Nebraska has something very special. I think this team is very special, and they're going to be an insane team for the next 4 years. And that's what I'm going to say about that. Anything else on Nebraska and Wisconsin?
No, I think I could run down a rabbit hole, but I don't really want to, and I don't want to really bring it up again because it's going to make me angry all over again.
So what are the predictions when they meet again in November in Madison?
I think Badgers will win.
I'm going to agree. I'm going to agree. This was a close one.
It was.
The closest game Nebraska has had in the Bob.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that it will be harder for Nebraska to win in the Fieldhouse than it was for Wisconsin to play in the Bob.
Agreed. And I think this is a huge learning experience for Wisconsin. I think they are going to have a huge chip on their shoulder after this because Wisconsin had won 10 in a row in their series against Nebraska, and it's going to be for the Big Ten championship, and Wisconsin's going for, what is it, a 4-peat? 5-peat?
5.
So that's on the line. I think they learned a lot about this Nebraska team, and they'll be able to adjust and get better from it. And I don't think Wisconsin's had a big challenge really this year. So I think Nebraska's been, for both teams, it's been their hardest competition. They're not really going to get it again until they play each other. So it'll be a little bit interesting. It'll also be interesting to see what the status of Lindsay Krause is come that match, as well as some of just other players in general. But the Fieldhouse, their tickets are going for like $900 if you can get a ticket. I've seen it's been sold out for as long as I can remember. But they also are doing like the standing room only as far as they can go up. And I think because it's a smaller venue and there's more people and like compact, it's a lot harder to play than like in a bigger arena when it's kind of spread out. Like me and you have both been in there, like when it's just kind of like you're just surrounded, like from floor to ceiling.
Leaning, like it feels like it's leaning over you.
Yes.
So like instead of in Nebraska where it goes out, the Fieldhouse feels like it leans over you. Yeah, I think it'll be harder. And the other reason why I say this is Nebraska has a freshman setter, a freshman star outside, and a freshman middle, and a freshman DS. Yeah. So I think that this is going to be the 4 girls out of their starters. This is going to be their first time in the Fieldhouse. Yeah. We've been to the Fieldhouse as Badger fans. We've been to the Fieldhouse when they play Nebraska. And when they played, we went to the Big Ten championship in 2021, the year they ended up winning the whole entire thing in a rematch against Nebraska. But the weight and the tension that you can feel in there when they play Nebraska specifically is different. But the Badgers genuinely like soak up all the fan energy. And if the fans aren't doing their job, the Badgers don't do their job. Another thing I think I'll say about why I think that Wisconsin will pull out the win in the field house is because Nebraska is slow to start on the road, and that will screw them. Yes. That will screw them in the field house. You cannot do that. You cannot give Wisconsin set one.
Exactly. And I think with having those 4 freshmen being on the road, playing the first time in the field house, they're probably going to shit themselves. Like I would do it every time. And so I think there's going to be a lot of nerves, especially too, again, it being the Big Ten championship, that throws a whole nother wrench into it, more tension. And I so badly wish I could be there because I would cry probably majority of the time. But it's going to be another 5th set thriller. I can see it. I already know. But I think Wisconsin's going to come out with a lot more fight than they did against Nebraska on Saturday.
So you made me look it up. So Nebraska plays in Madison on November 24th. Mm-hmm. That game is at 3 p.m. It is the Friday after Thanksgiving.
Is that 3?
3 p.m.
Oh.
Friday after Thanksgiving. So general admission seating on SeatGeek goes, you can only get 1 ticket at these prices. You cannot get 2. 1. 144. 229. 424 for anything below general admission. $424.
Yeah.
$294. $312. Wait, it gets worse. $715 in the balcony, like those nice seating that they just put in. $715 a ticket.
Oh my God.
$625.
Plus all of the taxes and fees that you get jacked on your price when you go off of Ticketmaster or SeatGeek or any of those. So you're not, those are just like for the tickets, but then add another $200 in taxes and fees to that.
Yeah, so to sit down, like usually where I think it's like right behind the benches or behind the scores table, $894 ticket. They have tickets on here for over $1,300 for this match.
If only.
That's insane. So mark your calendars. The rematch is coming. And I don't think this is the last time we will see Nebraska and Wisconsin play this year.
No.
Disappointed, but ultimately still excited. It was a huge match. I'm sure viewership was through the roof on a Saturday. Just really exciting stuff. So with that wraps up our recaps. So let's talk about the new rankings.
Yes.
First I want to say, while we are still sort of on the topic, Merritt Beeson got Player of the Week for the Big Ten. This is her 3rd Player of the Week honor. She led the team in kills, and she's now averaging 4.25 kills a set. And Big Ten Setter of the Week is Bergen Riley. She's averaging 11 assists a set, and this is her 3rd Setter of the Week honor this season. Nice. Well deserved.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, let's talk about these rankings. So obviously, there's a new number 1.
Yep.
And that is the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Wisconsin, for the first time this year, falls to number 2. Stanford sitting pretty at number 3.
Yep.
Louisville takes that number 4 spot. Texas moves up to number 5. Washington State falls to number 6. Where's Pitt? Pitt is number 7.
The same at 7.
They stayed the same? Oh, yeah. Okay, stayed the same. BYU moves up to number 8. Oregon drops to number 9. Arkansas stayed at 10, which I thought was interesting after losing to Kentucky, but they stayed.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia Tech moves up to number 11. Tennessee stays at 12. Penn State fell to 13. Kansas stayed at 14.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yep.
Kentucky jumps up to number 15.
They moved up 5 spots. That's awesome.
5 spots after the win over Arkansas. Purdue is at 16. They moved up 3.
Yeah, they moved up from 19.
Creighton is number 17. They dropped 2 spots. Dayton is still 18. Florida drops to 19. Or was that where they were? No, they dropped.
They dropped.
Baylor moves up
20
from 21. Yeah. Arizona State is at 21.
Yeah, they dropped big.
A lot. Houston stays at number 22. Western Kentucky is at 23. Auburn drops to 24. And new to the poll, UCSB.
UC Santa Barbara. University of California, Santa Barbara.
Liv knows what she's
They have a 20-2 record, which is
wow, holy
pretty good.
Who did they beat to get in there?
I have no idea. No clue.
Good for you, UCSB.
But also receiving votes, Santa Barbara had 76 points, and next was Minnesota with 70 points. Then UCF, Marquette, Indiana, Southern Cal, Iowa State, Ohio State, James Madison, and Texas A&M. So Minnesota's kind of getting there. I think if they maybe win out this weekend, I don't know who. They play Wisconsin. I know that. They might jump back up into the top 25, but we'll see.
Who else did Minnesota play besides Rutgers? Is that it?
This past week.
Yeah, was it just Rutgers?
They had to have played another team. I don't remember.
Either. Minnesota getting votes.
Not important.
No, not really. What about games coming up?
Games coming up. None tonight, Monday the 23rd, nor the 24th, really. Wednesday the 25th, Mizzou plays number 12, or I don't know if these are the new rankings, but Tennessee. Florida plays Ole Miss. That's kind of it for the 25th. The 26th, we have Baylor playing Texas at Texas.
Oh.
BYU is playing Kansas State at Kansas State. Purdue is playing Minnesota at Purdue.
That'll be good.
I think that might go to Purdue. TCU and UCF play. That's for Thursday, the 26th. Friday, the 27th, Wisconsin and Michigan State. Maryland and Nebraska. Oregon and Washington State. So that'll probably be a pretty good match. Baylor and Texas again. Arkansas and South Carolina. Penn State and Michigan. And then we have some other ranked against unranked teams. Saturday, the 28th, we have Rutgers and Nebraska. Penn State and Michigan State. Purdue and Illinois. It's kind of all it looks like. And then Sunday, the 29th, we have Minnesota and Wisconsin playing at Wisconsin. So a border battle, which will be fun. Arizona State hosts Stanford. Washington State plays Oregon State. Louisville and Miami. That might be kind of interesting. Miami is kind of, they just beat a ranked team last week. Wake Forest plays Pitt. Arkansas and Florida play.
That'll be good.
That'll be a good one. And that's kind of it for Sunday. So still not too many top 25 team matchups playing, but still some good conference games coming up.
Awesome. Well, that wraps it up. Big recap around Nebraska and Wisconsin, of course. Counting down the days till the next one. But we're looking forward to what week 9 will bring.
Mm-hmm.
And we will see you guys next week.
Yes.